During these 7 weeks of this series, we're trying to think of getting involved in a study experience as if we were going to school. And yet the feeling of challenging yourself to new insights and working out a pattern in consciousness that will be revealing to you at the fulfillment of it. So we want to see the idea involved in our growthy process, digging deep within ourselves as we would in a classroom experience. So as the old German professor would say, school is in. We're continuing today with the study of the Genesis account of the first 7 days of creation, which we're seeing as 7 steps in the creative process. It's probably true that many of us have a great many preconceived notions and prejudices about the Bible. We've been conditioned to believe that the Bible was written by God, that it is His holy word, and that its literal meaning should not be questioned. Also, that it is a historical account of the beginning of things. On the other hand, many have concluded that the Bible is for religious purposes and has little or no relevance for people in the world today. The Bible student, or even the Bible scholar, has often been stumped by the confusions and the incredibilities of the book because it has been considered, as I like to put it, in a horizontal way, dealing with persons and places and events in the context of time-space. But the great mystic thinkers through the ages have dealt with the Bible in a vertical sense, a personally symbolic sense, story of your life and my life, dealing with our innateness flowing out through the surface experience of life, dealing with our own personal involvement. So in these lectures, we're dealing with the story of creation as a clear outline of the creative process in the individual, revealing how infinite mind works and how creativity flows from your mind out through your fingertips. Yours will be the personal application of how this creative process works for you, what it is that you're doing in a creative sense. But the principle remains the same. In other words, the creation story is not an account of something that God did back there sometime, eons of time ago, or even an account of something that God does today. It is what God is, and what God is in you. The first 4 words of Genesis in the Hebrew, Breshith Elohim, meaning in the beginning God, meaning not first in order of time, when time began, as we say, but first in order of causation, dealing with the fundamental principle of life. Breshith means in principle. This is the erroneous translation that has given us a completely contradictory view of what it's all about. In the beginning mean fundamental law, principle, foundation, principle of mathematics, the principle of gravity, not a matter of time, space, but right now. So the goal of this study is not to know more about the Bible, though hopefully we will know a little bit more about that, even to know more about God as a definition or as an anthropomorphic being of the sky. Our goal is to know more about ourselves. If a person says he knows God but does not know himself, he's being self-deluded. You are created in God's image likeness. You are a unique individualization of God. So that creativity is not something that acts upon you or something you can develop by some outside techniques. It is the divine process in you expressing as you. So as Rollo May says, the creative person is the fully functioning person, a person who's alive to his potentialities. It's important to remember that you think by reason of the fact that you live in the field of infinite mind. This is your milieu. You are a point of consciousness within the mind of the infinite. As Paul says, let the same mind that was in Christ Jesus be in you. The same mind, same fundamental process, same creative flow, the same principle. So the flow of revelations of truth through Jesus evidence the potential flow in all persons. This is true whoever it may be. The flow of inspiration that flows through the poet, through the musical genius, through the scientist, is the full revelation of that which manifests potentially in all persons. So revelation is not a special dispensation of God. but a quality of divine mind and an extrasensory faculty of every living person. So the creative genius is not possessed of a special dispensation of power, but rather it is an evidence of the specialization of his power. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that great talent and creativity are a gift. Usually we look with envy upon the creative person. Wouldn't it be wonderful if, but no, look at me, I'm no good. I'm a dud. The point is, we're coming to understand now that the creative activity in a person is not just a gift. Educators talk of the gifted and how they can be culled out of the masses, like looking for diamonds in a mine. Some recent studies have been very revealing in the field of education. They've indicated that extremely talented people are not necessarily born with extraordinary gifts. More than likely, they become highly talented because of the nurturing process of their home environment. In other words, talent is not a special power, but again, a specialization of innate power, due chiefly to their catching the enthusiasm for learning and responding to the love and caring of their parents. That the creative genius is a person who has an opening toward that creative flow. But the creative flow is within every person. But that opening has been enlarged and widened and his capacity revealed through exposure to people around him that believe in him, that love him, that care for him, that give him the example of the excitement of the learning process. So when we talk about the creative process, we're not dealing with something pertaining only to so-called creative people. All persons are creative. You're creative. We're talking about you. So often we see some great work of art or some activity in science, some development, and we think how great he or she is, how creative they are. And then again, we usually imply how lacking in creativity I am. But note how in nature, when we see a beautiful flower or a lovely mountain scene or some remarkable evidence of instinct in animal life, we say, isn't nature wonderful? In the same sense, whenever we see some wonder working through a person, we should return to the principle. And in a sense say, isn't God wonderful? Isn't infinite mind wonderful? Isn't the creative process wonderful? Instead of just glorifying the person, we should acknowledge the mind force, because it's universal. It's principle, it's fundamental. It's as fundamental as gravity. Creative process that is being demonstrated through the person at that moment. And it is precisely here, I believe, where Christianity has lost its way, in the glorification and the deification of Jesus. And he very clearly rejected such adulation. For he said, why callest thou me good? None is good save God. He also said, I of myself can do nothing, but through the power of God that works in me, I can do all things. And he also said, the words I speak are not my words, but the words of him who sent me. That him referring to the Father within, the same Father presence that is within all of us. So then, in other words, it's important to get that clear realization that Jesus was not a special dispensation of power, but the result of a specialization of power. That's where we come in. The goal of life is self-realization, becoming more and more aware of the power within us, and giving discipline to specializing that power. So the 7 days of creation deal symbolically, or perhaps we could say even hieroglyphically, with the universal process that is a continuum. Certainly it has worked in general in the evolution of the universe, though not in the time frame that we have assumed. But it has worked in every creative achievement of every person, and it can work for you and in you now. That's the goal. And let's just briefly review what we've covered so far in the creative process, the Genesis story. First of all, we're told in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And again, this is a fundamental realization that all things come out of the principle, out of the allness of God. And we're told the earth was waste and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit moved upon the face of the waters. This was not to emphasize void, emptiness, but to turn attention away from things, back to the true light that lighteth every man coming into the world. To get back to the creative process, we must return to the one, the fundamental principle, allness, always present, total creative activity, always present, never absent from any of us. So then the first day, the first movement in mind, let there be light. which we refer to as primal illumination, not sense of knowing about things, not even getting an idea to do something, which we think a little bit more about as we go along. Just knowingness, getting into the light, as we talked about stepping through the mirror to the other side, stepping through the light out into the opening where you become involved in enlightenment. Not light that knows something, but enlightenment, just knowing. In the second movement of mind, let there be firmament, the birth of faith. Not believing in, just believing, creative perception. We talked about Shakespeare's thought of sermons in stones and books in the running brooks. Not to see what is, but to see what might be, to see creatively, as we mentioned, a person going into a pantry with condiments and foodstuffs on all the shelves, and suddenly getting a sense of awareness that here could be a cookbook, or here could be a recipe for a souffle, or a good cake. It's all there is in potential, but the firmament process is the ability to see it as potentially there. And again, then this moves into the third movement, let the dry land appear. The mental image of a formed thought, a plan or an idea is beginning to unfold. But remember, the dry land image is coming out of the seas of infinite mind within, not putting something into the mind, but releasing something that's coming without. See this as a process of gradually opening, like a rose, unfolding. In the third movement, which we dealt with last week, let the dry land appear. The not holding pictures in mind, but as Paul says, don't let your mind be shaped by the world about you, but let God remold your mind from within. We refer to this as the imaging or the I-amaging process, coming out of this flow of the infinite unfolding. Today we're going to deal with the fourth movement of mind, Genesis 1, 14 through 19, and we read, "And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, a fourth day." Now again, it's important to recall this is not history. It's not another day that God created something and then the day comes to a close. It starts with the sunrise and ends with the sunset. The astronomy is very primitive because light was created in the first day and the sun and the moon in the fourth day, which is a little backwards. Also, the land was created before a solar system, which is also backwards. So it's obvious that in creating the hieroglyph, the writers drew on a very naive picture of the cosmos. They didn't know the universe as we know it today through astronomy. They had a picture of a flat earth with a firmament overhead, and the sun, moon, and the stars were hung like props on a stage, hanging from the firmament above, or the sky. So we have to look beyond the literal acceptance of this to the symbology, the metaphysical insight, to get any sort of meaning at all. Charles Fillmore says the two great lights referred to here symbolize the awakening of understanding, the sun, and the will, the moon. Understanding is the greater light, the intuitive flow of awareness of everything pertaining to the dry land image, and the lesser light is the will, which has no illumination of itself, for its office is to execute the demands of understanding. Now again, just briefly, let's get this sense of the creative flow in the first 7 steps of creation, of the process. The light, remember, moving through the mirror to enlightenment. Firmament, a believing sense of what can be. The dry land, the image forming of goals forming in mind. Then the sun and the moon evolving the understanding of the things pertaining to the goal, and the will and the persistence to press on. So even as we need to let the dry land appear within the waters, the image coming out of our superconscious mind, so we need to let intuition reveal understanding about it. You see, this is a vital awareness. That which the mind can imagine, it can unfold the understanding of. Anything that you can imagine in consciousness is something coming out of mind, out of your own intuitive flow. And you have the ability to understand how to do it and the will to carry it forth to completion. This is the understanding, the sun and the moon. If you imagine in your wildest flight of fancy some new development, if you keep open, the understanding will come, the knowledge by which it can be achieved. And with that understanding will come the light of the moon, the will or the motivation to go forward. In this case, the will is the human experience of the divine will. Rather interesting. We have a grandnephew that lives next door to us in the cottage by our house. It's been marvelous to watch this young lad develop from an infant. Now he's about 2 years old, going on 2. We watch him every day, and it's been a very interesting process. We see this mind developing. We see his ability to understand and to put things together and draw conclusions. He loves to turn lights on and off, so he turns the light on. He says, light on, light off, light on, light off. He was out in the yard the other night. He looked up at the moon and he said, the moon is on. Which is a great evidence of logic manifesting in this mind. It wasn't just the moon is there, but the moon is on. The light's turned on, so the moon turns on. So somebody turned it on. The moon is on. It's an interesting perception, something that we will think about a little now. So the coming of understanding is the focusing of the infinite mind in you as you, your I-amness. Remember Moses in the wilderness, this great story that has so much a part of the Bible background. He had the idea of delivering his people from their Egyptian bondage. This was an idea that came to his consciousness. Now note how the creative process worked, how this flow that we've talked about so far is manifest in the story of Moses. First of all, he saw the burning bush. The bush was on fire, supposedly. It was something that was probably a bush that was on fire with blossoms in the spring. But in him it represented some being a fiery manifestation, a ball of fire coming to him as an idea. And he was told to remove his shoes, the firmament or faith perception. Then the plan to go back to Egypt and free his people, the dry land image coming into consciousness. Then he felt inadequate. He said, who shall I say sent me? The revelation came, the sun, or the funny papers, they show a light bulb over the head, suddenly the flash of light, yeah, I know, the sun, and says, I am hath sent me. Then Moses demurred and he said, but I'm slow of speech, how can I convince? But the moon is on, if we have eyes to see. And he had this inner realization, go and I will be thy mouth and teach thee what thou shalt speak. So armed with this new understanding, and this I am power, and with the awakening of the will to achieve, he went forward to accomplish. So this creative flow was manifested. And we want to see this now, not as a series of bumpy steps, coming here and this and this and this, but as a constant flowing process that works. That's why we're carrying this along as we go through, and at the conclusion of each of our lectures, we're taking a time of meditation to get the sense of this flowing process that moves as we get aware of the creative flow in us. Now, Bible translators have always been confused by this use of the I am. Many refer to it as blasphemy when it's expressed by a person today. A person may, in truth, use the affirmation, I am a perfect child of God. It's blasphemous. How can you say I am? Because I am is the manifestation of the divine name. Jesus used this I am power. He said, I am the resurrection, the truth, and the life. I am the way. In Genesis, the 4th chapter, the 26th verse, the translations that most of us have read, says, then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. And yet the marginal note, if we're careful in our analysis of the scriptures, the marginal note very clearly indicates that it literally said, then they began to call themselves by the name of the Lord, which means something entirely different. But the translators couldn't understand it, so they changed it, made the correction, as they say, for clarity, actually for confusion, because this changes the whole meaning of it. Very important realization. Then they began to call themselves by the name of the Lord. In other words, to identify themselves with the divine flow through I am, claiming their own oneness with the divine process. Otherwise, we are left with the idea that Jesus was God's only Son. And all we can do is suffer and accept Jesus as our personal Savior, but we'll always be miserable sinners at heart anyway, because no one can come close to this divine process. But Jesus' whole thought was, don't look at me. Look as I'm looking. Find the divine depth in you as I found it in myself. Refer to yourself as I am the resurrection and the life. This is what you have to say for yourself. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the good shepherd. I am is this divine creative process flowing in you, personalized as you. Matthew Arnold says, the seeds of godlike powers are in us still. Gods are we, bards, saints, heroes, if we will. So the will is the driving force of life. It's a very important part of this process, the light of the moon, in other words. Edison was once asked, what would you have done if you had not finally found the secret of the incandescent lamp? Edison tartly replied, I know one thing, I would be in a laboratory right now instead of wasting my time talking to you. So to Edison, as with all creative minds, the moon is always on. The persistence to keep at it until the end is reached. You find this tremendous drive that makes the great separation between the would-be creators and the actual creative people. I've often said that the difference between a writer and a would-be writer is procrastination. So often a person says, I'm going to write a book someday. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, paint this, I'm going to create this, I'm going to achieve this someday. Someday I will. And he has the whole making of it in his consciousness, but he lacks the will to proceed. The moon isn't on in his consciousness. He's not aware of it. Now, obviously, it's important that the will must be trained to act with understanding, because when the will acts on its own, it becomes emotional and willful. There's a tremendous emphasis in most success conditioning courses on developing a strong will. They often say that most failures in life are due to weak wills, which is probably true. But as one course puts it, smash the wall that blocks your path to fortune by the projection of your will. Smash it, obliterate it. You just see it like a bull in a china shop going forward, pushing everything out of the way. So the will must mature with a kind of willingness, a letting go. Otherwise, it may very well become stubbornness, battering doors down to achieve personal goals. There's a very subtle difference here between will and willingness. In the practice of truth, many persons are unconsciously trying to make things happen through affirmations and treatments. This is often cultivated by, I think, a misdirection in the teaching. When a person says he's trying to make a demonstration, he may very well be working by the force of will, often forcing an experience that he neither wants within his heart or is prepared to handle. It's like the classic story of the woman who believed that as a child of God she had a right to what she wanted when she wanted it. And she wanted to be married, and to one particular man. And she said, I treated and treated for him and he didn't have a chance. But then neither did love have a chance, because they were together only 6 months when she was back again treating to get rid of him. Revealing the fickle nature of our insight into truth so often when we do with an immature sense of the will. It's my strong feeling that not enough attention is given in the teaching of truth to the importance of letting go of the human ego and its willful insistence and persistence in demonstrating things. Quite often there's the attitude, I know what I want and I know that in truth I can have it. So God becomes the genie that does your bidding and hops to your command. This implication is quite often present in the naive presentation of the truth, which becomes totally superficial. Bull your way through you blast everything that stands in your way through the expression of will. So I say it's important to get it into your consciousness that what you desire, really desire, God desires for you. But it's important to be willing to listen from within. So many of our desires are superficial. They're exteriorly oriented. They're envies. They're covetousness. We see something out here and we think that's what we want because we want to emulate it because it gives us a certain ego fulfillment and so forth. But what you really desire, it comes through your intuitive awareness of your inner flow. That's why we say in the creative process, let there be light. Let there be an awareness of enlightenment. Then let it flow forth into the firmament process of faith in the truth that you can achieve this thing through the expression of your own innateness. And the dry land image is the idea manifest in your consciousness. And the light of the sun and the will to go forward and do it, all coming out from within, not outside, from within your own unfoldment. So get into your consciousness that what you desire, God desires for you. That which you work for is seeking you. And stop trying to make money and let substance flow. Stop trying to make a demonstration of health and let life have its way in you. Let there be. It could be said that this is the prayer that never fails. Let there be. Let there be. But so often we're not willing to let there be. We want to decide what it's going to be, and we're going to push our way through to it and somehow make the demonstration. In Mark Connolly's classic drama that I refer to often because it's classic, the drama Green Pastures, there's a character of God sitting back on his cloud saying, I think I'll pass me a miracle. And you can imagine Delaude straining till he's blue in the face. Let there be light. Let there be firmament. Let there be the dry land. This tacit tress. Then he comes to the seventh day and he says, I'm pooped. So he rests. That's making light of it, but to a certain degree, that's what we've believed. After all 6 days of creation, he's tired, so he has to rest. We'll talk about that when we get to the seventh day, but the important thing is there's no evidence of straining. Not at all in the Scripture, not at all. It says, just let there be, and there was. Not make there be, but let there be. This is the great formula of creation. Not there must be, or there will be, or dear Lord, make there be, but let there be, let there be. No suggestion of effort, no strain, no hurry, no willfulness, no anxiety or doubt. Just let. Tremendous realization. And when we get the right relationship between the will and the understanding, the moon reflects the light of the sun. It becomes an outlet for that which is essentially the divine flow. So the will becomes the willingness to let. It's the same urge to go forward, but it's not my will but thine. No ego, no pressure, because it's a flow from within. And many of us have developed a kind of a distaste for this idea of God's will. Many quail at the mention of it, thinking of a capricious intent for God to have his own way. So when Paul says it's God who works in us to will and to do his good pleasure, so often we have been told that this said God is going to do anything he pleases, and there's nothing you can do about it. But God's will is the ceaseless longing of the Creator to perfect himself in that which he has created. Think about that. God's will is the ceaseless longing of the Creator to perfect himself in that which he has created. You're part of the creation of God, an extension of that self-livingness of God. So God's will is that in you which seeks to bring to you the fulfillment of what you are. Physical health, complete, total. God could never will sickness or limitation. God can only will the full expression of your potentialities, the full releasement of your powers and capacities, always from within out. As Jesus says, it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. The kingdom being the divine potential is within every person. It is a God spell or an upward pull of the unfoldment of our innateness. We've talked about the rose, the unfoldment of the rose. What is the will of nature for the rose? It's the full opening and completely blossoming forth and the fragrance and the beauty of the rose in its fulfillment. And beyond that, the releasement of the seed for further possibilities of growth. This is the law of nature. Now, in the context of our fourth step, the appearance of the sun and the moon, the understanding and the will, as we said, there's often an underdevelopment of the will, an under-realization of this capacity of the projection of the full power within you. Many of us have been conditioned to a kind of life where the will has little place. Things have always been done for us. We don't have to make decisions. The decisions are made for us. We're coming into a day where we get involved more and more with computers. We let the computers do the work. We don't worry too much about it. Push the button and see what we're supposed to do today. Obviously, the computer is not going to do this, but many think of the computer as sort of an astrological sign, so you can have the computer tell you whether you should wear certain clothes today or whether you should eat certain foods. Perhaps it'll never come to that, I hope. But the thing is, many of us have lived in that kind of a life. And often parents have felt a responsibility to break the will of the child so he will be obedient and well-adjusted. And that's sad. One of the problems of the welfare state is too much security, softening of the will to grow. So we have all sorts of programs of retirement and sickness benefits and vacation benefits, and everything is done for us. We never have a single word. Cradle to grave, complete security. A terrible thing when you see the full implication of it. It is interesting that in depressions and war times, man's greatest creativity has flourished. I remember the story of, I think Ralph Edwards, his name was. He wrote a book called The Amazing Crusoes of Lonesome Lake. He and his family went up into the Yukon and lived to carve their way out of the wilderness, built their log cabin and did all the things that primitive pioneer people used to do, and lived completely for a couple of years. And he wrote this book about the amazing Crusoes of Lonesome Lake. And he said, one of the amazing lines of this I've always remembered, he said, all we had was a lot of sheer necessity. All we had was a lot of sheer necessity. Many of us found ourselves faced with this during the loss of power after the storm last week. We had in our house for several days without any power, without any lights, without anything to even pump the water out of the well. Nothing, no heat, nothing to cook with, no radios, no television, nothing. All we had was a lot of sheer necessity. And we just saw a small implication. Some in Long Island are still living with this. Just imagine then going up into the Yukon, the snowy country where temperatures were as many as 100 degrees below zero and having to survive in this kind of a wilderness. All he had was a lot of sheer necessity. The interesting thing is we tend to accomplish in this type of a relationship the things that make us proud of our humanity. It's not that we want to go back to that time. Many of us have lost the tremendous drive to draw upon the creativity of the potential within us. Old Mother Hubbard, when she went to the cupboard and found not even a bone, was in a perfect condition to sit down and write a great novel or carve an immortal statue. One man was in a desperate situation. He was out of work. He was living on his wife's income. His condition seemed so hopeless that he toyed with the idea of ending it all. He eventually talked with an imaginative counselor who said, what if some uncle of yours that you weren't even aware too much of, who was very wealthy, came to tell you that he was going to leave you a legacy that would be yours completely for your own if, at the end of a year, you've paid all your bills and achieved a secure income? That's ridiculous. How could he expect me to do that? But the challenge is there. If at the end of 1 year you've paid your bills and you have a secure income flowing in, then I'll give you this legacy. You would resist that for a while, probably. But the counselor said, just suppose this was true. Think a little bit about it. What would you do? He went off by himself, and at the end of an hour, he'd worked out on paper a very logical plan for getting himself reestablished in a new career. He was then asked by the counselor, why don't you do it? It was that simple. That was his awakening. He had not let the creative process work through him. The story is he went on to a very successful work. Before very long, it was very evident that he wasn't going to need any legacy of that kind because he was going to achieve his own support and security in the world. But he hadn't challenged himself with that. This is so often true with a person. We're so filled with self-pity, so out of touch, so feeling resentful that other people have everything. Why should I have what I have? He simply took the time to get still, let his own innateness, his own intuitive flow come forth. And he made a plan, a logical plan for getting himself reestablished. And the counselor again said, why don't you do it? That simple. It was there all the time. The counselor didn't give him anything. No one gave him anything, except the fact that he'd been endowed with everything from the very beginning. Failure to separate the I can'ts from the I cans, as we talked about a few weeks ago. In other words, the man needed to look up. It was little Matthew to say, the moon is on. The moon is on. How often the dry land appears in consciousness, a desire, a plan, a goal, and there follows a feeling of helplessness and hopelessness. We say so often, wouldn't it be wonderful if, but nah, I can't do that. Let the dry land image appear, and that understanding of how to do it unfold, and then see the moon is on, the determination to go forth and do it. It is true that some people fail because they don't have the can-do, but it's probably more true that the problem is the lack of will-do. How many times have you said to yourself, after seeing someone do some creative thing, I could do that? You ever said that? I could do that. That's not so difficult. I could do that. But why don't you? The person who did it had the moon on. And for us, it's, well, someday, well, I'll get around to it eventually. We don't build on the I will. So whenever you find yourself looking at things in the world and saying, I could do that, perhaps something within you is seeking to express. Perhaps there's an idea that's forming, the dry land image. Perhaps there's a sense of the understanding of how it can be done. You can say clearly, I could do that. Let the light of the moon come forth. I will do it. Is it something important to me? Is it something that I would enjoy doing? Is it something that I would get fulfillment from doing? Then let me work in that direction. Maybe not the same thing. Begin to create the plan as the man did out of work. Set down on paper how he could possibly work it out, how you could make your own way toward that end. And then do it. Do it. Get underway. Do it. So meditate on these movements of the mind, of the creative process. Back to the principle in the beginning, God. Then the unfoldment of light, then the faith, the firmament process, and the imagination in which you experience an image or a goal. Then let the continuum unfold. Let the rose come to full blossom before you as the dry land has come. So will the means of achievement and the will to go on, the determination and persistence to press on toward the goal. And remember, this whole creative process builds one step on another, and failure at any point frustrates the true inward-out process and leaves you at sea, darkness on the face of the deep. And also remember that we're not working with some force that we use which acts on us to do something for us. It's not a matter of holding a thought or programming something into the mind. This is where we so often get off the track in our study of truth. this idea of mind programming and saying things over and over and over to make them true, and then going forward smashing the wall that blocks your path to fortune by the projection of your will. This can only lead to further conflicts. Continually come back to the principle, in the beginning God. It means at the root of your being, the divine source, not something you put into your mind, but something you're going to awaken and release through it. As Browning says, we're seeking to open out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape, not seeking to effect entry for a light supposed to be without. And when the moon is on, and the will is properly built into the flow of the divine process, then, as Ella Wheeler Wilcox puts it, that which the upreaching spirit can achieve, the grand and all creative forces know. They will assist and strengthen as the light lifts up the acorn to the oak tree's height. Thou hast but to resolve, and lo, the whole great universe shall fortify thy soul. And as we will discover next week, when we get the sun and the moon together, I can and I will, we open the way for the awakening of myriads of supportive and expansive ideas, and for the awakening of discernment and good judgment. And finally, the perfect plan is formed in mind, fixed in the consciousness, symbolized by the creation of man, and then the creative Sabbath, the incubation period. And remember, all this is going on in mind. Nothing has happened out here yet. The first chapter of Genesis deals with the involutionary creation. The second chapter says there was no man to till the ground. Nothing is done yet. It's all a part of a movement in consciousness, getting us ready for the releasement of this creative flow. Let's be still for just a moment now. And I want us to work with the meditation process in the first 4 stages that we've experienced so far. Carry it up to the present. Make it workable. As we've done on several of the weeks previous, I'd like to do this against the backdrop of a vibration which we set into function through our own humming. We're going to hum the word one. Let my words then be the words of the creative flow within you, suggesting to you something very beautiful working through your consciousness out into your life in the way that specifically meets your needs. So let's hum. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. In the beginning, God, the root and basis of your experience, the foundation of your life, the source of your own light and enlightenment. So out of this realization comes, let there be light. Not light in terms of an idea or a picture or an image, but light which is basically enlightenment, the ground, the foundation, light, enlightenment. And let there be a firmament. Let there be a firm place in consciousness, which is the faith process, by which you can see things not as they seem to be, but as they can be, as they might be. And let the dry land appear, the dry land image, an image in mind, an image of something that is possibility for you. The I-amaging process. I am the expression of the divine light through me. Let there be a sun and a moon. The sun being the understanding of the image and how it can be done, and the will meaning the drive, the persistence to go forward and to experience it. Let this process unfold. Let's see the rose of the great beauty of truth unfolding for you as the light of your life. All the needs of your consciousness, physical problems, financial difficulties, relationship experiences of confusion, all manifesting through creative flow toward a fulfillment, which is healing and harmony and prosperity, all coming out of your own creative flow, beginning with the root of your being, in the beginning God. And let's give thanks now for this consciousness, for the tremendous awareness of the creative flow that knows no end through you. And the oneness that you're uttering in sound is an evidence of your commitment to the realization. All the good that you seek in your life comes forth from within yourself, out of your own relationship to the creative flow. Not something to put in your mind, but something to draw forth from it as you release your own imprisoned splendor. Now let this humming of oneness continue on as long as you can hold your breath, and just let it fade off into the distance. But as the sound becomes inaudible, let's remember that the oneness and the vibration of its nature continues. You are a spiritual being. In the wholeness of you, there is a creative flow, and your life can never be empty or confused or limited as long as you know this in the beginning God. As long as you let this creative flow manifest through you to do its healing, harmonizing, fulfilling work. Let's feel grateful for this. For the truth that makes us free. And so be it.